Hello and welcome to Field Talk, a Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. Monitor Farm Scotland is farmer-led and farmer-driven and aims to encourage discussion and solution-based thinking within the industry. In each of these episodes, we're going to be speaking to different specialists and experts to try to find ways to help you. I'm Mark Stephen. Throughout this series, we're looking at succession planning. All businesses have to contend with problems. Things like red tape, regulations, fluctuating economy, rising costs, falling returns. You get the idea. Everybody's got a hard life. But in farming, you also have to contend with the weather and very often your family. And not just at the end of the day, but all day and every day. Farming life can become so hectic, it's sometimes difficult to work out where you are now, never mind where you might like to be in 10 or 20 years' time. Succession planning is one of those things where everyone knows you should be having the conversation, but it's really difficult to know where to start or how to go about it. Well, my guest today might be able to help you with that. Heather Wildman is a coach and she joins me now. Tell me about yourself for a start.
I am Heather Wildman. I am a farmer's daughter from a farming family in Cumbria. Everyone sort of gets confused with the accent, thinking it's the northeast or Yorkshire, but it's from the Lake District, Cumbria. Brought up on a hill beef and sheep farm just between Cockermouth and Keswick. Left school at 15, loving young farmers, very active in young farmers. Didn't really have any career destiny of where I wanted to be. But I've been very lucky. I've had quite a mixed career, working in the bank and then working for De Laval, Alfa Laval, and then doing a bit of travelling, then working for AHDB and then a field farming scholarship. I now live in Dumfries and Galloway on a 1,200 cow dairy farm. I have two daughters, Charlotte and Nicola, who are both involved in farming in some way. One is a bank manager, one does a bit of relief milking and child minding. And I'm really lucky to have the best job in the world.
What does it mean to be a coach?
For me, the coaching is about getting the best out of people. It's understanding what it is, what the problem is, trying to get it out of them a little bit more about what is the issue, what is the challenge, help them be aware that they may be not alone in that. That's definitely one thing I find with the succession. Trying to get people to have a bit of responsibility and accountability in where they are and why they're there. I also give a lot of confidence and reassurance with people as well. I think that's a big part of coaching, is seeing the potential and helping people see the vision and the future, what it could be. They may be frustrated or angry or just a bit lost at the moment, but it's helping them visualize what that future could be and then giving them, working with them, the solutions, the confidence, the steps that they need to take, helping them sort of visualize that to give them the determination to get through the setbacks. I think in supporting them in that, if they are having setbacks, again, sort of challenging them. Well, why did you really do everything you could? How did you verbalize things? And then I think giving them deadlines as well is a good thing. So what I really, really like is when we have our meetings, we talk it all through, we get a real positive outcome. And sometimes that's all some families need. They've just needed a path, they've needed some clarity, they've needed some structure, and then they've needed some direction and deadlines in a way that go, I don't see them again. And other people need more. They need more of a clock in, more of a support, more accountability, I guess. And I think that's something as well. As a coach, it's quite nice to have someone. I know when I was getting coached by someone that was a great, was it coaching, mentoring? It was a bit of both, but it was really good to have someone to go back to and say, look, this is working. This isn't. How can I unstick this? What can I do better?
What led you into coaching?
Well, I didn't really realise I was coaching because, as I say, I'm a bit thick. I never went to college or university, and someone will say to me and put a bit of a sort of tag on something, oh, you do this, you do that. And I'm going, do I? I just do what I do. And I probably wasn't aware of it. And then I guess as I've been doing a bit more training, a bit CPD myself, and been involved in other organisations and things, I thought, oh, I am a coach. Oh, I do that. And maybe I do it differently when I'm mentoring some of the young farmers and different people as well. So completely accidentally, Mark, which is the story of my life, to be honest. And it's got me into a lot of fun and it's got me into a lot of mischief at times.
You mentioned the Nuffield Scholarship.
Yes. Running up to 2010, I did the Scottish Enterprise Rural Leadership Programme, which was the first time I'd ever done any proper training, external training since leaving school. And that was a great opportunity. If anyone in Scotland here wants the chance to challenge themselves, I really recommend the Scottish Enterprise Rural Leadership Programme. So I did that in 2010, which led me on to change jobs and move to AHDB, which I really, really enjoyed. And then I started getting frustrated again, and I was feeling a bit of a square peg in a round hole. I was facilitating discussion groups and working with a lot of farmers, dairy farmers in Scotland, and folk would, be really motivated at the meeting. Then I'd see them 6 months later, and I'd say, "So what did you do?" And they say, "Oh, well, actually, I didn't really get round to it. Something got in the way. We need that speaker back." And I started to question my effectiveness. So the topic I studied was communication, how to influence and motivate change. What is it that makes some people absolutely transform their lives, whether it be weight loss, whether it be quitting drink, whether it be grazing systems, all these different things. And so I studied. I went to Chile, Peru, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America, Ireland, and Wales. And it was the most incredible opportunity. I was away 11 weeks in total. I was sailing up the Amazon. I was cowboying in Montana, mustering in 3,500 head of Aberdeen Angus cattle. I was mustering sheep in the Canterbury Highlands. I was locked up in a prison in Penetanguishene in Canada, which was all part of influencing and motivating change because a correctional unit was the ultimate. And I met Microsoft and psychologists, researchers, government, knowledge transfer specialists, farmers, ranchers, small businesses, huge businesses. And it was the most amazing opportunity. And you get a real window into people's businesses. And at the end of it, you've got to write a report and come up with some findings. And for me, the really successful businesses that influenced and motivated change, that drove success out of the most challenging, bitter, emotional, financial, terrible issues, whether it be communities, personal, mental, businesses, whatever. When I broke it all down, they all had three things in common. And they all had a vision. They knew where they were, they knew where they wanted to be, and they knew how they were going to get there, and they knew when they wanted to get there. So they had a clarity of vision, a dream, a goal. The next thing that they all had, which really drove that, was they had a communication strategy. They knew what they needed to communicate, who they needed to communicate it to, and they knew in what format that communication and at what level that communication was to be, depending on who the individual was or what their role was within the business, the family, the organization. Then the final thing, which I think is really key, and it's funny, I didn't realize how important collaboration had been in my life and in my career, but collaboration really underpinned the success and drove the speed and the pace and the feeling of that success. Because if you have got the right people with you, around you, with the right information, the right knowledge, with the right skill sets, you suddenly start becoming luckier and achieving things greater and faster, because it's not what you know in life, it's who you know. And many of the best opportunities are just there, but if we haven't verbalized them, people are not psychic. So it's then having those right people around you. And I use that simple, really simple model, which is a complete coaching tool. And I'll do that whether it be a young farmer that's ringing me up just a bit lost, whether it be the National Health, critical illness and life support. I did a team workshop with them and I was like, oh my God, Heather, you're out your depth here. But actually when I got down, spoke to the sisters and the seniors, it's all people and the principles absolutely work the same. And this is the model I use in Succession as well.
Where do you actually start? I mean, if somebody comes to you for coaching, where is the starting point?
My inquiries tend to come either from someone that has heard me at a meeting or on a podcast, and I resonated with them, and they've either got something nibbling away at home. It's early days. Could we come and talk to them? How we don't know where to start. We don't know what to do. Would you come and chat to us? So that is one inquiry. Another inquiry is it's got to the end of the tether. We are so frustrated. We cannot go on. We have tried doing this ourselves. Heather, will you come and speak to us and help us? So those are the two lines. Ideally, what I try and do is encourage more people to get there before there's an issue, because that's absolutely the best time to start, before there's a problem. But whichever it is, I'll go with where they go. So someone will ring me and they'll express their concern. And I'll say, right, for me, the most important things then is, will everybody be happy to speak to me? Because to bring an outsider in, if they don't trust and value and respect me, I shouldn't be there. So I would check that everybody is happy with me. They would look at my website, look at some different work I've done. I would encourage them to pick up the phone, or I would ring them, because some people will not ring me, but they'll answer a call if I phone them. We'll have a little chat. And then the next thing that we do is we agree who's going to be at the meeting. So again, it depends what every family is, but for the gold standard, I would want all generations to be there. So that would be maybe granny, grandpa, mum and dad, the children, but also the in-laws as well. But for some families, that's not appropriate. Some families, mum and dad maybe want to start together because they want to sow some ideas, they want to think about it before they're ready to share it. Others, it's maybe just mum and dad and the children. So then they would all get sent a questionnaire, and I want every single family member to fill in this questionnaire confidentially, as fully and openly as possible. And then I would arrange a one-to-one with them ahead of the family meeting. And that mostly is virtual now. And that's either just them individually or them and their wives or partners. Because sometimes if it's not right for them to be at the meeting, I do think their voice should be heard. Because often what unravels is when we go home and we're offloading, someone says, well, why did you ask that? Did you not think about that? Because we all listen, interpret different things when we're in a meeting and have different priorities. So I will speak to everybody virtually and really try and get a feel of what's working, what isn't, what have been the issues, how do they feel, what do they really, really want? What are they afraid of saying? And why would they be afraid of saying? Or what would they be afraid of the reaction and the outcome? And it's trying to find some of the landmines, I guess, and unearth some of the skeletons and some of the behaviours and when things changed, and to get a bigger picture of the business of the farm. So I do that with everybody. And the questionnaires are really insightful, because I'm also trying to pick out the personalities. And the forms are great because you can get somebody that goes into all the story, the history. You get other one that puts all the emotion and the family. You get other one that's very factual, very detailed, and you get others that's one word. And that again is giving you a little bit of a preempt of what the dynamics of these people are. And it helps you sort of put together pieces in a puzzle, but it's still very hard to get everything. Then we would have the meeting. Now, a number of succession coaches, facilitators, they would say you should never have it on the family farm. And I can see why, because it can be interruptive, it can be distracting, it can be a little bit of a control mechanism, and there's a bit of emotion in the family house. But if everybody's happy and that's the right place for it to be, I see no reason. And I don't have a structured seating plan, not a conscious one. Maybe subconsciously I do, of how people sit and everything. And again, it amazes me because I want people to feel as comfortable as possible. And again, that then depends whether the meeting is an amicable one, I'm there before there's an issue, or if I'm there for mediation and it's a hostile one. Then when we have the meeting, first thing I want to do is agree ground rules. How are we going to behave as a family? And this can get them giggling, because everybody knows the buttons they can press with each other. They know what is the normal language with some families, because some families, aggression, shouting, quite colourful language and motivated energy is normal. That's not, oh no, they're not cross, Heather. That's just how we speak. So it's really quite important for me that I understand that. The next thing I want to agree is, what do we want to get out of this meeting? Because we've only got so long. So let's really agree. And I don't go too back in history. I don't want a greeting meeting. I want to know, what do we want going forward and how are we going to get there? And sometimes it's relevant to do a little bit of backdating and a little bit of storytelling and history, but other times it just devalues the whole meeting and it sets off a whole heap of other behaviors. So once we've got that set, we've got the objectives. The next thing I want to do is I want to fact find. And I want to know who's in the family. Are they married? Are they divorced? Do they work in the business? Have they had anything out of the business as well? And what are their roles within the business? I'd like to know all of that. Then next thing I want to know is, what is the business? What is the land? What properties do we have? What is the value of that? Which is really important now, particularly after the last budget. I'll also then want to know, what is the business? Is it sheep? Is it beef? Is it cattle? Is it turkeys? Is it pigs? Is it cereals? Whatever it might be. And then what is the structure? Is it partnership? Is it sole trader? Is it limited? And who are the partners? And what is their capital account? What is their share of the business? And are they a partner of the movable, which would be the machinery, the livestock, the debt, and the cash in the bank? And who is the partner of the fixed, the land, the house, the properties and things? So that can be already, as soon as you start that in a meeting, it's amazing how many people don't know that information, have never talked about it, have forgotten about things. And a lot of time at the moment, what concerns me in agriculture is the negativity, the doom, doom, doom that is out there. We're doomed. Nobody wants us. There's no future. We've no money. Who would want to farm? And so that simple process, you can feel oxygen coming into the room because they look at their assets. This is on the whole. Sometimes it's not what they thought it would be. But on the whole, most of my farms are doing a lot better than they think they are. The other thing I insist on is that we do a realistic valuation of everything, of all the livestock, all the machinery, all the land and the properties as well, because this is so important now going forward with the changes in the tax. Then once we've got all that done, we'll look at the private assets of mum and dad as well. So is the pension, is the savings, is there insurance policies, do they have properties? Often there's a boat or something that's very, very personal that normally brings out some emotion within the room. So what are all of those? And again, that's really important that we have all that listed. Now, sometimes they're not comfortable sharing about that because they've maybe got an awful lot more than they thought. Other times they're a bit embarrassed as well because there's not as much as what they'd hoped there would be. But mostly when I come to the end of that, I just would sit and say, right, let's just take a moment. You know, all these years you've been grafting, you've been working hard. It has not been nothing. Look at this, look at what you've achieved. And yes, some of that might be from just the land values increasing, but you know, it's still something to, because I think in farming, we don't do that very often, just pause and sort of look around and see what we've got. Then the next thing I want to say is from the questionnaires that I've been picking up, from the one-to-ones that I've been having with all the family members, it is my role then, and this is when I suppose it's reading the room, it's gauging the hierarchy and the emotion in the room as well, and how people feel about speaking is who I will then draw out to talk and bring people in. And what do you think? How do you feel about that? And normally, when the questionnaires come, I want to know, what is the business? What are your aims and dreams personally? What are your aims and dreams for the business? Then I will ask them to do a SWOT analysis. So a SWOT analysis is, what are the strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities within your family and your business? What do you want to achieve from the session? And what are your concerns? So I'll have gained a lot of that. Now, many, many times there's real unity in these forms, but they've just never spoken it out loud. They don't realize that they've all got the same concerns. They've all got the same hopes and dreams going forward. So that's when I would then put that in place, and I would congratulate, and I would use little bits from everybody's conversations to put people at ease, or to say, look, we have a problem and this is not going to go away. Because sadly, some of the workshops I have, people are so unaligned, so separate in their values, so strong in their feelings and sometimes hatred of an individual within the family, that for me, to cover that up and plaster that over is wrong.
Can you give me an example of that? How bad can it get?
Oh, so it was in early days. It was a lovely family, mum and dad, and three children. Beautiful, beautiful place. And as ever, and I hear this so many times, we just want to get on. It'll be fine, it'll be fine. We always go through this turmoil, we just want to get on. But it starts affecting mental health. It starts affecting the actual financial situation of the farm, and it certainly affects the viability and productivity of the business because people are going different ways. So this was a mum and dad. They wanted to give half the farm to the daughter and they wanted to give the other half to the son. Mum and dad wanted to stay in the farmhouse for a bit longer and sort of oversee and work with them. But the son was adamant, and the language, the behavior, his actual day-to-day working, there was just no way this was ever going to be resolved because they were just so different.
What did he want?
He wanted the whole lot and he wanted to farm a different way to what mum and dad did. And he just did not respect dad. Dad was much more laid back, more gentle, it'll be right. And he wasn't articulate in verbalizing how, why, what he was doing. He just got on and did it. And he had a good feel and he'd been lucky in farming, which a lot of people are. We're not very good at sharing. And I think that's one thing I find. Family farms are great while one person is in charge and everybody else does as they're told. But then as the young bull comes into that field and then gets a bit more confidence, a bit more experience, they just challenge, and they could not work together, and the son could not articulate what he wanted, his vision, and how he wanted to do it. And he wanted to go harder, faster. He had a more abrasive personality. He was hungrier and he wanted to get somewhere a lot quicker. So he wanted to take on more debt. He wanted to get bigger machinery, whereas dad had just done things nice and canny, and it had always come right. You didn't rock the boat. You didn't push your luck. You just played things. And the daughter worked very much like that as well. They were very much aligned in how they spoke, how they behaved. But the son, because of this frustration, it got aggressive. And then it got to the point he was doing things behind his parents' back and everything. But often that is also a sign of frustration. Well, you're not going to do it. I'll do it myself. I'll show you. And mental health was coming into this, and it was affecting mum and dad's relationship and their marriage because mum was trying to keep the peace and was trying to see one side over another. So it got very, very difficult for them.
How did that resolve itself?
They split the farm.
They did split the fixation. I would have thought, however aggressive the son was, and however determined he was, the ultimate decision rests with the parents. It's their property.
And so many children don't acknowledge and recognize that. I'm entitled. It's something that really makes my toes curl when I come in. And that's one thing I will always say when we're sorting out the succession. First of all, it starts with the owners of the business. We must make sure they are secure, safe, and financially secure. What do they want? Now, sometimes they don't know what they want. And that's why I start with the questionnaire and everything. Because for me, when someone's gone to the time, the cost, the trouble, and the anxiety of having a family meeting, I will not tolerate when I go in a meeting and someone just saying, don't know, don't know. I just want everyone to get on. I just want the children to decide, or the children say, well, I just need mum and dad to decide. Well, actually, this is your life. This is your future. Be careful of just rolling along with it because the outcome might be something that you really do not want. And have you thought about this? So another part of what I do is sort of model and help them see what change might look like, because that is one thing that I've noticed. A lot of the clients I work at, people are just so tunneled in farming, working, doing what we're doing. They've not taken that time to step back and step out and look at sort of the bigger picture, the different opportunities. Well, if I did retire out of this house, or I didn't retire, but if I moved out of the farmhouse to let the daughter in with her children or the son in, and we moved into a different property or farm, how would that look? You know, and so many times this is one of the sticking points, is because mum or dad won't leave it till they're in a box, but then they can't physically do the work. So for me, it's like, well, what do your friends do? How many of them are still living in the farmhouse? How do they spend their life? How do they want to live? And you know, how much easier is it for them when they can just go away? So it's trying to, well, why don't you go and see some different properties and go and have a look around, go and view some houses? You know, it might not be as bad as you think. Can I set you a challenge to go and look around a couple of areas and go and speak to some of your friends that you think look really happy, and talk to them about how they got there and how they felt and found it? And again, I've seen some things where the children, using that kind of example, whereas there's frustration. I had one family that there was four boys. They were absolutely tearing bells out of each other because they were frustrated. They then were taking it home to their wives, and the wives were then just hearing one side of the narrative and then becoming defensive and having a perception of the other family members. And so therefore, when it went to social meetings, there was a bit of prickliness, but it was all because of the narrative the boys were taking home and this frustration of not knowing what the future was. So they talked about one of them splitting or selling the farm, and then nobody wanted to do that. And we said, well, hang on, why don't we take on more debt and get bigger? Why don't we take on more debt and work together and buy another farm? Because they had two farms. Let's buy some more land, you know, because they had such complementary skills, and then they could cover each other at weekends. So we did the numbers, we put up a plan, and they agreed in 10 years they would work together in 10 years. They would all have defined roles and responsibilities. We set management structure with meetings, so everybody had to be accountable and report to their meetings. And they were all going with that common goal. Remember that vision, dream, collaboration. So they all then had to communicate how each of them were doing, and those highs and lows, because some was arable, some was beef, some was sheep, and different things. But in that 10 years, because they had a clarity of direction, they could all see they needed each other and were stronger together. They absolutely stormed it. And when the 10 years came up, they did split, but they continued farming together because they really saw the value and they enjoyed that the opportunity. So sometimes I will say to people, be careful what you wish for. Some people want to split up and go on their own because they think their other sibling or their parents aren't very good. But I'm thinking, you know, are you aware of the debt, the extra cost you're going to have to take, the responsibility? Because many people have been sheltered sometimes by the full reality of what it is to running a business.
I was slightly shocked, I must confess, when you used the word hate within a family. But that's a completely realistic expression of it, because I think it probably holds true of all family businesses. It's not just a balance sheet. There is a huge emotional component in this, and recognizing that emotional component is not airy-fairy or millennial. It's pragmatic. You will not be able to resolve these situations unless you factor this in.
And I think that's my role, to come in and to shake that out and to get people to look at themselves. And sometimes what I get from families is this normal? How do we compare, Heather? Oh, you'll never have seen this, Heather, or is this common, Heather? And that's another part for me, is when I go into the families, I will tell them a little bit about my story so that they understand. I do understand farming, and I understand, you know, some of the difficulties, because many times one of the frustrations is there is a party of the family that is silent, that is reluctant to speak, will not be brought into the conversation. And that is how they have manipulated and maybe controlled. So my role is to get people talking, everyone speak up. And one of the lovely feedbacks I get many, many times is, I can't believe you got dad to speak. I can't believe dad opened up like that. I can't believe we behaved so well. I can't believe where we got to in that time. And I think that's the duty, the absolute core of a good coach, is to get everybody comfortable and relaxed, that they feel safe and secure, to be open and air some heated, quite emotional things, but for the facilitator in the meeting to be able to say, whoa, okay, can we just take a moment and just rethink, because time, tone, and language. And if I can feel someone in the one-to-ones that's going to get heated and they really want to put something across, but they struggle because either they burst into tears or they get angry and emotional, I will coach them in how to articulate their position. Because again, sometimes some of the frustration comes from in not being heard and not being able to get the words out. I had another family, it was two brothers. One was very articulate, very good with numbers, very good with business. The other brother, brilliant hands-on, fabulous with the livestock, the grass work and everything. And he had a very strong family, and one brother wanted to split the business up. The other one couldn't understand why we wanted to do this. But when he got put into the family situation, he stuttered and he just lost all credibility and he was seen as being thick, which was terrible. So one of my jobs in there to make sure he got the best opportunity and he was his best self. And it wasn't right that his family, his wife and daughters and children were in the meeting. We got them to do a PowerPoint so that he could articulate everything that needed to be said, so we could make sure the whole family's voice was heard and he was supported.
A lot of what you've talked about so far is coaching as relating to the business and to, farming generally. Can coaching be useful to the individual?
Oh, absolutely. When any of us, we can get in our own heads. We can get lost in our own heads. And I think social media it can be a wonderful thing. I've learned so much through social media, met an awful lot of wonderful people and had a lot of opportunities from it. But it can also be a really destructive thing as well. So I've seen myself when I've had a difficult day, I've had a difficult phone call, I've maybe lost a contract, I've maybe had a conversation that didn't go the way I've wanted. And it's really easy to think disaster, end of the world, I'm done. The fraud has been found out. We've all got this imposter syndrome, and I think that is in everybody, regardless what they say. So for me, it's coaching myself and thinking, right, hang on, Heather, is this as bad as you think it is? What could you have done better? Let's be absolute honest. What went well? What didn't? What could you have changed? And what is the opportunity going forward? And what are you going to do about it? Because we have control over ourselves, but we haven't over others. We can try and influence, but ultimately we cannot make anybody do anything they don't want to do, and we shouldn't. And so that's one thing I think, and it's, personal coaching, thinking about, well, what do you want to be, Heather? What do you want to be, Mark? How are you going to get there? What one thing are you going to do every day? How are you going to reward yourself? And how are you going to make sure when it goes wrong, you don't beat yourself up? And who do you need around you? Because I think the other thing of influencing and motivating change is associate yourself with the success you want to be. And then live it, breathe it, walk it, talk it, and you will become it.
I am assuming that coaching is not the one true path. That you can use coaching in association with, I don't know, other support mechanisms, things, peer groups, that kind of thing, workshops.
Yeah, meditation, loads of different things. And it's finding what's right for you. And right back to the beginning, I said, I think there's some blurred lines between mentoring, coaching, but I think it's finding the right person that works with you, the right discussion group. It's finding what works for you.
Where would I find a coach? I mean, we're both old enough to remember the yellow pages. Is there a directory of these things available?
If you were just looking for succession, in Scotland, we're really lucky. We've got the Farm Advisory Service, which is through your land management options. And, succession, there's a fully funded up to £1,600 of professional advice. And if you apply on there, there is a menu of accredited and recognised succession specialists. Just recently started up, we've got the Succession Alliance, which is a number of succession coaches or facilitators all over the UK with different specialisms and different backgrounds. Because again, depending what you want, some are more into people and personalities, some have slightly more business skills, some have more mediation and negotiation training. There's a real mix of us. Again, there's a mix of men and women, because some people feel a woman is better, other people it would have to be a man. And it's funny as well. Someone said, what is the definition of a specialist? And ideally, it's someone that lives a minimum of 100 miles away. And it's a bit frustrating because there's so many times folk would ring me up and say, Heather, I've got this problem and everything, but we can't get you in. And I'm going, okay, why? And there's a perception maybe that is it confidential? And that's one thing, any coach, it has to be the trust and the confidentiality has to be hand in hand. Sometimes you're too close that they feel it'll be judged. They're going to see you, once you've opened up and everything as well. And sometimes you're just not the right fit. But Googling, succession facilitator, succession coaches, for me, it's looking at organizations. There's a lot of really, really good organizations that do this. Like I said, the Scottish Enterprise Rural Leadership Programme, the Young Farmers, there's so many.
I'm sure this is how long is a piece of string. There won't be a fixed time for this. And once you've come to some sort of agreement, some sort of conclusion, does that mean it's fixed thereafter?
Yeah, you're absolutely bang on. I know when I first started, and if we use succession as example, I would be speaking to lawyers and accountants and say, so go on, how much does it cost to get your wills and your power of attorney in place? And how much would a succession sort of thing all cost? And they're like, for God's sake, Heather, I can't give you a figure because it could be huge, it could be simple, it could be straightforward. And I used to think that was a real cop-out, but now I'm involved in it and working with a real variety of scale of businesses and families and complexities. I do get that it is hard to say for definite until you get into it. And a lot depends how open the family are right at the beginning or the individual is right at the beginning. It's a bit like often when they go to the doctors and you've had your appointment, then just as they're going to the door, the absolute gem comes out. So typically a lot of my families, it could take about 2 years from even having heard me at a conference or read an article and the seed has been sown to actually having the meeting. And I've seen that not be uncommon for a family just because it's taken time to get the right time in the seed sown or it's just got that bad. Other times from a family agreeing to have the meeting, all they want is just some guidance, some structure. And I'm fairly in and out. It'll be probably 2 months from them inquiring about me, getting the questionnaire, doing the one-to-ones, having the family meeting, and then they get a report and they've got direction and they're away to go. I've had other families, they want to clock in every year just to be held accountable, and we always get something out of it. And for me, it's really rewarding those ones because you're learning yourself what's worked and what hasn't, and how hard to push and how hard when to pull back. But it's really nice to see how they've progressed and to keep challenging them as well. So it really varies. And I've seen young farmers and different people that have come in because of what they're going through and because you're the right fit. They're maybe wanting to clock in and bounce off and just check in with you. And again, others, they just want some guidance, some structure, and then away they go.
And when? When should people do this?
Ooh, when you feel you need it. It's not something that I have to go and get off the shelf. It's something that's naturally happening. I would say I'm being coached quite naturally a number of times in different circles I'm with and in different groups and family members and different things. So a lot it depends on your network and where you are and how you're feeling. And if you're comfortable at the pace you go in the challenge, how you're feeling personally, mentally, physically, you maybe don't need it because it's subconsciously happening because of those that are around you. You're absorbing it and you're bringing it in. But for me, I think it's when you feel you're frustrated, you're getting challenged, you're losing yourself, something doesn't feel right. I'd be then starting to think, hang on, can I fix this myself? Can I see what it is, or do I need some help?
Heather, it's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Heather Wildman there. And if you'd like to find out more, you can visit her website at Saviour Associates. You'll find more information and contact details there. I'll just take this opportunity to flag up the live Undiscussable workshops with Lydia Carpenter. They're happening in November at the Mansfield Hotel Elgin on the 3rd, the Radston Hotel Lark Hall on the 5th, and the RHASS Pavilion at Ingliston on the 7th. You can register for any of those events by visiting the Monitor Farm Scotland website and sign up using Eventbrite. Lydia featured, along with her colleague Elaine Fraze, in our last episode. They are two Canadian experts on succession planning and conflict resolution, because it turns out that Canadian farmers have exactly the same problems as we do. And if you didn't hear the last episode, I would recommend downloading it and having a listen. It's probably going to be worth your while. They both talk a lot of sense. That is it for this episode, however. Thanks for tuning into the Monitor Farm Scotland podcast. Just click subscribe wherever you get your podcasts for more episodes, and we will be continuing to dive into this subject. If you know anyone, friend, relative or neighbour who could potentially benefit from this, word of mouth works too. Just point them in our direction. If you'd like to stay updated with our latest news and events, visit the Monitor Farm Scotland website and follow us on social media for more updates. Monitor Farm Scotland is funded by the Scottish Government and managed by Quality Meat Scotland and AHDB. Until the next episode, I'm Mark Stephen. Thanks for listening.